Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. On the remote mining planet of Zeta 9, the days were long and grueling, filled with the incessant hum of machinery and the relentless rhythm of drilling deep into the planet's crust. The colonists, a hardened group of pioneers, had come seeking fortune in the rich veins of metals and minerals that lay hidden beneath the planet's barren surface. Among them was Lucas Drake, a young mechanic who spent most of his time in the shadowed confines of the ironclad outpost, repairing and maintaining the equipment that kept the mining operation running. Lucas was a man of few words, preferring the company of machines to people. He was skilled with his hands, capable of coaxing life back into even the most stubborn of engines, but he had always felt like a small cog in the vast, grinding machine of the colony. The foreman, Briggs, and the security chief, Miller, were the ones who called the shots, while Lucas quietly did his job, unnoticed and unremarkable. That all changed the day the drilling rig malfunctioned deep in the mines. It was supposed to be a routine repair. The rig had been acting up, its sensors flickering and its drill head refusing to engage. Lucas had been sent down to fix it, armed with his toolkit and a handheld diagnostic scanner. As he descended into the mine, the air grew thick with dust and the oppressive weight of the earth pressing down from above. The tunnel walls, illuminated only by the harsh glow of his helmet's light, seemed to close in around him, and the distant sound of machinery echoed eerily through the dark. When he reached the rig, he found it partially buried in rubble. The drill head had struck something hard, something that the rock and metal sensor had failed to detect. Lucas frowned as he began his inspection, his scanner beeping erratically as it struggled to make sense of the readings. He pried open a panel, exposing the inner workings of the rig, but found nothing out of the ordinary. Frustrated, Lucas decided to clear some of the rubble away. He grabbed a nearby pickaxe and started digging, the sound of metal on stone ringing through the tunnel. As he chipped away at the debris, he uncovered something that made him pause, a smooth, polished surface, unlike anything he had ever seen before. It was a dark, almost black material, shot through with veins of shimmering light, pulsating gently as if it were alive. Lucas set the pickaxe aside and reached out to touch the surface. The moment his fingers brushed against it, a shock of energy coursed through his body, sending him stumbling backward. The world tilted, and he fell, his head striking the ground as darkness swallowed him. When Lucas awoke, he was lying on the cold stone floor of the mine, his head throbbing and his vision blurred. Slowly, he sat up, trying to make sense of what had happened. The rig was still there, half buried in rubble, but the strange surface he had uncovered was glowing now, emitting a soft, ethereal light. And then he noticed his hand. Embedded in the palm of his right hand was a small, glowing fragment, the same dark material he had uncovered. It pulsed in time with his heartbeat, a gentle thrum that resonated deep within his chest. Panic surged through him, and he scrambled to his feet, staring at his hand in disbelief. What the hell? He had no answers, only questions, but there was no time to dwell on them. The tunnel suddenly felt suffocating, the walls closing in as if the planet itself were trying to trap him. Lucas grabbed his toolkit and bolted back toward the surface, his mind racing with fear and confusion. Back at the ironclad outpost, Lucas wasted no time in seeking out Dr. Elena Vargas, the colony's xenobiologist. She was the closest thing they had to an expert on anything alien, and if anyone could help him make sense of what had happened, it was her. He found her in her lab, surrounded by a clutter of specimens and equipment, her sharp eyes immediately narrowing as he burst in. "Dr. Vargas," Lucas gasped, holding up his hand. "You need to see this." Elena's gaze shifted to his hand, and her expression transformed from irritation to shock. She grabbed his wrist, examining the fragment embedded in his palm with a mixture of awe and concern. "Where did you find this?" she demanded, her voice taut with urgency. "In the mine," Lucas replied. "I was fixing the rig, and I found this thing. It was buried in the rubble. I touched it, and then," Elena released his wrist, stepping back as if the fragment might explode. "This isn't just a thing, Lucas. This is a relic. An artifact from a civilization far older than anything humanity has ever encountered." We've only heard rumors, whispers of such artifacts hidden on fringe worlds like this one, but I never thought. Lucas's mind was reeling. He had never been one for grand discoveries or adventures beyond the familiar mechanics of his work. But now, he found himself at the center of something far larger and more dangerous than he could have imagined. "What does it do?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Elena admitted, her eyes still fixed on the fragment. "But if the stories are true, it grants power, immense power. Enough to change the balance of power across the entire galaxy." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Power. It was a word that could mean many things: strength, control, destruction. And now, that power was embedded in his hand, a part of him whether he wanted it or not. Lucas barely had time to process this before the door to the lab burst open, and Foreman Briggs stormed in, followed closely by Security Chief Miller. Both men were visibly agitated, their eyes flicking between Lucas and the fragment in his hand. "We heard about the artifact," Briggs growled. "What are you planning to do with it, Drake?" Lucas looked between the two men, sensing the undercurrent of tension. The artifact had already sparked interest, but now it was clear that it would also spark conflict. "It's part of me now," Lucas replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "I don't know what it does or how to control it, but Dr. Vargas said it's powerful. We need to figure out what we're dealing with before anyone makes any decisions." Miller stepped forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his sidearm. "This isn't just about you, Drake. That artifact could be a weapon, and if it falls into the wrong hands, enough." Elena snapped, cutting him off. "We don't even know what it does yet. The only thing we know for sure is that it's dangerous, and it's not something we should be fighting over." But the seed of conflict had already been planted. Briggs, always looking for an edge in the harsh environment of Zeta-9, saw the artifact as a tool to increase productivity, to make the colony more profitable. Miller, ever the pragmatist, saw it as a potential weapon, something that could be used to protect the colony, or to assert dominance over others. And Lucas, caught in the middle, felt the weight of the fragment in his hand like a curse. Before the situation could escalate further, an alarm blared through the outpost, the shrill sound echoing off the metal walls. Red lights flashed, and a voice crackled over the intercom: "All personnel, report to the command center. This is not a drill." The three men and Elena exchanged tense glances before rushing out of the lab, Lucas trailing behind. The command center was a flurry of activity, with screens displaying incoming data and communications officers shouting orders. On the main screen, a massive ship loomed, descending through the planet's atmosphere like a predator closing in on its prey. "It's them," Elena whispered, her face pale. "The Zarn Dominion." Lucas's heart skipped a beat. He had heard the stories, the tales of the ancient alien empire that had once ruled vast swathes of the galaxy with an iron fist. The Zarn had been defeated long ago, their empire shattered and their power diminished, but they had never been fully eradicated. Now, it seemed they had come to reclaim what was once theirs. "We need to prepare for an attack," Miller barked, his voice cutting through the noise. "Get everyone to the shelters and arm the defense turrets." But as the outpost sprang into action, Lucas felt a strange sensation wash over him, a tugging at the back of his mind. The fragment in his hand pulsed, and he suddenly understood. He could feel the Zarn ship, its systems, its weapons, its crew. He could control it. Without thinking, Lucas dashed out of the command center, ignoring the shouts of those behind him. He ran through the corridors, his feet pounding against the metal floor as he made his way to the surface. The moment he emerged into the open air, he saw them, sleek, black war machines descending from the Zarn ship, their weapons already primed and ready to unleash destruction. Lucas raised his hand, instinctively channeling the power of the artifact. A beam of energy shot from his palm, striking one of the war machines and causing it to veer off course, crashing into the ground with a deafening explosion. The others turned their attention to him, their weapons locking onto his position, but Lucas was no longer afraid. The fragment was guiding him, feeding him information and power. He could see the weak points in the machines, the flaws in their design, and he exploited them with precision. He fired again, and another war machine fell. And then another. By the time the other colonists arrived, armed and ready to defend their home, they found Lucas standing amidst the wreckage of the Zarn machines, his hands still glowing with the power of the artifact. But the battle was far from over. The Zarn ship began to open, its massive doors revealing a towering figure, a Zarn overlord, clad in gleaming armor and wielding a weapon that crackled with energy. The colonists hesitated, fear rippling through their ranks, but Lucas stepped forward, his gaze locked on the overlord. The Zarn overlord's voice boomed across the battlefield, deep and resonant. "You have something that belongs to us, human. Return the relic, and we may spare your world." Lucas clenched his fist, feeling the fragment pulse in response. "This artifact is ours now. You're not getting it back." The overlord laughed, a cold, cruel sound. "Foolish human. You do not understand the power you wield. It is but a fraction of what we possess. Surrender now, and your death will be swift." But Lucas wasn't backing down. He had seen what the Zarn could do, the devastation they could bring, and he knew that if they reclaimed the artifact, they would use it to enslave humanity. He couldn't let that happen. The battle that followed was fierce and brutal. Lucas used every ounce of the artifact's power to fight back against the overlord, his energy blasts clashing with the alien's weapon in blinding flashes of light. The ground shook, and the air crackled with raw power as the two opponents clashed, each trying to overpower the other. But the Zarn overlord was stronger, more experienced, and Lucas knew he couldn't keep this up forever. As the overlord advanced, Lucas felt the fragment in his hand begin to strain, the energy within it growing unstable. He realized then what he had to do. With one final, desperate move, Lucas channeled all of the artifact's power into a single, focused blast. The energy surged through him, overwhelming his senses, but he directed it at the overlord, aiming for the core of the alien's power. The blast hit its mark, and the overlord staggered, his armor cracking and splintering, but the strain was too much. The artifact in Lucas's hand began to fracture, the glowing veins spreading like cracks in glass. He knew that if he didn't destroy it, the Zarn would come back, and this time, they wouldn't leave any survivors. With a heavy heart, Lucas made the ultimate sacrifice. He shattered the artifact, unleashing a massive wave of energy that engulfed the battlefield. The Zarn overlord was vaporized, and the remaining Zarn forces were thrown back, their ship crippled and forced to retreat. As the energy wave consumed him, Lucas felt a strange sense of peace. He had saved his people, his home, and in doing so, he had become something more than just a mechanic. He had become a hero. When the dust settled, the colonists found only the ruins of the battlefield and the faint glow of the shattered artifact. Lucas Drake was gone, but his legacy would live on. The ironclad outpost was renamed Drake's Stand, a tribute to the man who had saved them all, and far away, on a distant world, a small fragment of the artifact lay dormant, waiting for the day when it would awaken once more.